the decomposition part of the functions of the ecosystem. Now we'll move on to the energy flow part of the functions of the ecosystem. Now, when we talk about the energy flow, so it is the sequential process in which energy flows from one trophic level to another trophic level. Now, what is a trophic level? See, for example, there are so many different types of organisms that are there, right? There are producers, you people know already about that, meaning all those organisms that synthesize food for every organism or every other organism on the earth. And apart from that, there is also the carnivores, the herbivores, and the top carnivores. These all are there. So each of the group that they form or each of the part that they are present at becomes a trophic level. Okay. So from one trophic level to another trophic level to another, the energy flows. Now, the incident solar radiation, meaning the sun rays that come to us, it is 100%. Out of this 100% of the sun rays that are coming, 50%, or you can say less than 50%, is what is absorbed by the plants for photosynthesis. Now, the plants do not take up all of the solar energy. No, they don't utilize that much. Rather, they use less than 50% of it. For what? And less than 50% of the incident solar radiation is the photosynthetically active radiation. Okay. Khadija, you also switch on your video. And Mariam Luhani, you also switch on your video.
Yes, ma'am. 1 second.
So less than 50% of the total energy that comes to the earth, out of it, only the less than 50% becomes the active energy for photosynthesis, which we call as photosynthetically active radiation, PAR. Now, this one gets captured in the photosystem or photosynthesis, like for the gross primary productivity. So, out of this 50%, only 1 to 5% is used for that, and net primary productivity is 0.8 minus 4%. So, imagine how less amount of energy is used. Apart from that, the rest 50% or the more than 50% of it is absorbed by the gases, the water vapor. It is also reflected by the clouds. Always remember that the photosynthetically active radiation is less than 50%. Now what happens? That the solar radiation is taken by the producers, which we know are the plants. They do the photosynthesis and everything. Then these plants are consumed by the herbivores, which are the direct consumers, or you can say they are the primary carnivores. Then these herbivores are consumed by carnivores, and then the carnivores are consumed by top carnivores. All in all, this is how energy flow or energy transfer is taking. Now, the food chain. Now, you people have already studied about food chain in lower classes, isn't it? Now, we are going to study that same food chain, but at a higher level. So, there are three types of food chain that we can see in our world. First is the grazing food chain. Then comes the detritus food chain. Lastly, there is the parasitic food chain. Now, every food chain can be modified depending upon the organisms that are involved, right? For example, if it is only the parasites and the dead and decaying matter, then we call it as the parasitic food chain. So, likewise, the food chains can be modified in many ways. Now, the first one is the grazing food chain, which consists of the producers, the consumers, lastly, the decomposers. Now, what happens? See, this is what I mean by trophic level. See, no matter which kind of food chain we are talking about, the source of energy will always be the sunlight or the sun. Now, initially, the first trophic level is formed by the primary producers. Here I've written the full form of all of the abbreviated things. So primary producer is PP. PC is primary consumer, so that is herbivore. SC is secondary consumer, that is a carnivore. And TC is a tertiary consumer, that is a secondary carnivore. Okay, I'll write here also. Primary consumer. Primary consumer, which organism would come into this? All the herbivores. Primary consumers are those that are directly dependent upon the plants for their requirement, food requirement. So that becomes the herbivores. Then comes secondary consumers. Secondary consumers are those that are indirectly dependent on the plants, rather they will eat all the herbivores. Then comes the tertiary consumers that consume the secondary consumers, meaning the carnivorous organs. Is it clear, students? Any doubts? So the first trophic level is formed by the primary producer, that is the grass, the trees, or the phytoplanktons in the case of water. Then comes the primary consumer, that becomes grasshopper for grasses, cow for grasses, and then zooplanktons for phytoplanktons. From there would come the secondary consumer, that is the bird, fishes, and the wolf, which will feed on the primary consumer. Ultimately, there comes the tertiary consumer, which is the man or the lion. And tertiary consumers are those consumers which are not eaten by any other organism, meaning they are not consumed by any other organism. Like, is there any organism that hunts human? No. Is there any organism that eats lion? Can you think of any organism?
No, no.
No, you can't. And you can say that hyenas eat lions, right? But hyenas eat lion when they die. They don't hunt to eat them, right? So that is why man, lion, they are the tertiary consumers, or you can call them as the top carnivore. They are not eaten by any other organism. Clear? So this is a great example of a grazing food chain. Grazing means from one level to another level, the size of the organism is also increasing and their feeding habits are also increasing. Now, the grazing food chain is the major conduit of energy flow in an aquatic ecosystem, meaning mostly in the ecosystem, grazing food chain takes place. Then comes detritus food chain. Detritus food chain is for the decomposers part, which starts from the detritus. So the detritus, they get eaten upon. Detritus is what, students? Tell me. I taught this in the previous class. What is detritus?
Dead remains of
Hmm.
organism.
Yeah, meaning the raw material for decomposition, isn't it? Detritus is only that substance in which the decomposers would act. So detritus, they get eaten or digested by the earthworms. Now the earthworms furthermore get eaten by the sparrow, the little bird, and then the little birds get eaten by bigger birds such as falcon. So this is a detritus food chain which involves detritus, a decomposer, and the other components of the ecosystem. Lastly, there comes the parasitic food chain, in which this tree gets eaten by the herbivorous birds, and the herbivorous birds eat the bugs in the lice. So ultimately, what is happening? A parasitic mode is being shown, right? The bugs and the lice, they are getting eaten upon by the birds, which is their food, and they are getting preyed on, isn't it? So that is what happens. Now, if you think about it, the this thing, the food chain is not a very practical approach. Okay, food chain is not a very practical approach, being that none of the, you can say, energy transfer or the feeding pattern are so simple. Okay, none of it. So a food web tells us about how interconnected it is, the interconnected food chains. Normally in our world, in our ecosystem, food chains, simple food chains can't exist because one organism is connected to another organism in some way or the other. So there comes the food web. It is the interconnected form of all different types of food chain. And it is a more practical approach. So if anyone would say which is more practical, food web or food chain, so you should know food web is more practical. Then comes the 10% law of energy transfer. Now this law is given by or proposed by Lindman in the year 1942. Now he said that the transfer of energy from one trophic level to another is accompanied by the loss of energy at every trophic level. Meaning that at every trophic level, 10% of the energy gets lost. And okay, you can say that okay, only 10% of the energy is being transferred to every trophic level. For example, if at the producer level there is 1000 kilocal energy, okay, 1000 kilocalories energy. So now 10% of it goes into the herbivores which eat the producers. So only 100 kilocal is going there. Now from the producers, 10% will go to the carnivores. That is 10 kilocalories of energy. Ultimately, the secondary carnivores would receive the 10% yet again, and that is 1 kilocalorie. So at every trophic level, only and only 10% of energy is being received. So here 10% of 1000 kilocalories is going for the herbivores, then 10% of 100 kilocalories is going for the carnivores, the primary carnivores. Ultimately, 10% of the 10 kilocalorie is going. I'm just writing here so that you people don't get confused later on. So this is how the energy transfer takes place. Only 10%. Okay, our system, our ecosystem, our world runs on this 10% law. Clear? Any doubts?
No, ma'am.
Okay, now you people can note it down. Done, students?
Yes, ma'am.
Done.
All of you are done, students?
Yes, ma'am.
Done.
All of you are done, students?
Yes, ma'am.
Done, students?
Yes, ma'am. Done, ma'am.
All of you are done, students?
Yes, ma'am.
Done, students?
Done, ma'am. Done.
All of you are done, students? Okay, any doubts up until now?
No,
Hmm?
ma'am.
All right, now let us see this thing about the food web. See, the detritus food chain may be connected with the grazing food chain at some level. Also, some of the organisms of the detritus food chain, they are the prey to grazing food chain animals. Like they are interconnected, like I told you. So in ecosystem, linear food chain as shown seldom exists, right? Because every organism has alternate source of food, because there is no organism that just feeds on one thing and that's all. They have other sources of food as well. An animal may have preference for a particular prey, but if the latter has a small population, it may feed upon the other prey, because if the population of the prey is dying, then the organism may change it so that the population does not go extinct. So, like you know that a predator is prudent, meaning it is thoughtful of what it is going to eat and all. Single animal may be eaten by different animals, and thus network of interconnected food chains at different trophic levels in a biotic community is called as a food web. Occurrence of food webs provide stability into the ecosystem. Food webs operate because of the taste preference for particular food and unavailability of food. One animal may feed upon organisms of even different trophic level, like snakes may feed upon mice, which is a herbivore, and frog, which is a carnivore. Both of them belong to different trophic level, but they are being feeded upon by one organism, that is a snake. Jackals are both carnivores and scavengers. Sparrow is a primary consumer when it is eating a seed, because it is directly at that time, it is a herbivore because it is consuming a plant, product or plant. But when it feeds on the insects, right, then it becomes a secondary consumer. That means at that time, it can be a carnivore. Imagine. So since this complexity is there, that is why food chain is not practical. Food chains, they are not practical and they do not exist. So the more practical approach to understand things are the food web. Now this energy transfer law that I told you about, this is a little bit about it. Let's just see. 10% law of energy transfer. This law was proposed by Lindman in 1942. Transfer of energy from one trophic level to another trophic level is accompanied by the loss of energy at every trophic level or every level. When the plants are eaten by the herbivores, about 10% of the energy in the food is fixed into animal flesh, while 90% is consumed in ingestion, respiration, maintenance of body heat, and other activities. Similarly, when a carnivore consumes the herbivore, again 10% of the energy gets transferred. So all in all, we can say that at every trophic level, only and only 10% of the energy is being transferred. And that is what we call as the 10% law of energy transfer, which is given by Lindman. Now this one, again, from the producer, 10% goes to the herbivore. Then from the herbivore, 10% goes to the carnivore. Ultimately, the next level, like 10% is being transferred at every trophic level. So you can see residual energy decreases drastically within 2 to 3 trophic levels. As a result, an ecosystem can only support like a limited number of trophic level, hardly 3 to 5 trophic levels. That's it. Not more than 3 to 5 trophic levels can be there. Respiratory loss gradually increases in the successive trophic level, meaning the loss, that is the respiratory loss, it is going to increase when we move from a lower trophic level to the higher trophic level. It is 20%, 30%, and 60% respectively at the producer level, consumer level, and the top carnivore level. Any doubts up until now, students?
No, ma'am.
Okay. See this part about the food chain and the food web, and this the rest of it. Now you can note it down. And this part is important because many a times it can be asked in questions. Also about the 10% law, like they'll give you 5 or 3 trophic levels. They'll give you one energy of the producer, and then they'll ask you to find out the energy that is there on this level, this level. So you just have to do 10% of it, and then your answer will be there. Clear?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, from the food web paragraph, we only have to copy the highlighted portion.
See, if you write the whole entire thing, it's a more descriptive thing. You'll know better. Okay, so write down the whole entire thing because it explains how food chain is not practical, how food chain cannot exist, and how food web is a more practical approach. Okay,
And from the 10% law also full.
and also the 10% law, the part that you have already written, you leave that part and write the rest of the part, which is not there in the text. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Done, ma'am.